Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to this week's episode of Jacket Sports Weekly. Today we're recapping the PAC Wrestling Championships and how the Waynesburg wrestlers finished, recapping indoor track and field ahead of their PAC Championship meet, and then men's and women's basketball as the seasons wind down.
Welcome to Jacket Sports Weekly, Waynesburg University's weekly sports show where we cover the best of the best in athletics. Our analysts discuss a multitude of highlight plays such as touchdown passes.
And Barber's going to throw again, one-on-one. Does he got it in him? That's a catch! Tyler Richmond with flags thrown everywhere makes the catch! Touchdown, Waynesburg!
And ones.
This was low. Waynesburg's going to get it. Suggs is going to pull away here, go for the layup, and it's going to fall in and one! PJ Suggs!
And home runs.
Higgins drives one to left field. The left fielder running back, and that ball is out of here. Grace Higgins.
Join us every Wednesday to see what's new in Waynesburg University athletics.
Once again, welcome into this episode of Jacket Sports Weekly. I am one of your co-hosts, Michael McKenzie, joined by Ethan Zbizarski to host today's episode. We're starting off talking about wrestling. Just wrapped up the PAC Championships. Regionals coming up. To talk about Waynesburg University wrestling is Mo Kiger. As always, Mo, thank you for taking the time to join us. First, I want to start off, who were the best finishes among Waynesburg wrestlers at the PAC Championships this past Saturday?
Yeah, to no one's surprise, it was Jesse Orban. He placed first in this tournament, as last year he fell short by one match in the finals. So that was a pretty big improvement, and it was a lifetime goal for him to be a PAC champion. Another one was Seth Evans, who made it into the finals. Sadly, he fell short as he lost by a technical fall, and he just needs to improve for this regional tournament coming up, which I think that he will do very well in. And then the third one is Aiden Bischoff, who came off of an injury to wrestle in the PAC tournament and placed third, which is outstanding as he went 3-1 on the day. And for him just coming back off of that injury and how major it was, that's just really good. And it says something about him as a wrestler.
So would you say there was any certain surprises, maybe some upsets, dark horses, disappointments, whatever adjective you want to use, in this tournament specifically for Waynesburg? We understand that overall as a team, Waynesburg wrestling hasn't been the best, but individually a lot shine through, including the coaching staff and wrestlers. So is there anyone maybe specifically that maybe surprised us this past weekend?
In my opinion, I don't think so. But Jaron Polk, he had a really good day until he got to the semifinals, and unfortunately he got injured in the first couple seconds of it, which he had to default the rest of his matches. So that's just one of my issues with that, is that he had to default the rest of his matches because he was doing very good throughout, and he got his first win to make it to the semifinals, and then he got injured, so that was disappointing.
Yeah, you talk about Jaron Polk. He won his first match of the day. Then 5 seconds into his next match in the quarterfinals, he was unfortunately injured. There were other Waynesburg wrestlers that won matches. JT Hollyfield had a win. Ryland Parker had a win. The team did finish in last place technically with the points, but what were some of the positives that you took away from this? Not only just the first place finish for Orban and the second place finish for Evans, but as a team collectively, because there were some positives and multiple match wins outside of those top three finishers.
Yeah, everybody that ended up wrestling in this tournament for Waynesburg won at least one of their matches, which is huge because as last year, not everybody won a match, and most of them went 2 and out. So that's a very big improvement, and it tells Coach McKinney how good of a coach he is, as he won was named Coach of the Year for the PAC, and that just says a lot about this Waynesburg team and the head coach.
So kind of tying it back to Jesse Orban, you alluded to last year. He came up 1 match short and actually 1 point short at W&J last year. And then this year he gets the win. He completes the cycle. I mean, he went 18-0 in duels before heading into the PAC championships. But specifically, maybe what does that say about him as a wrestler and what we've seen overall, what he's been able to do all year? And this is him just as a sophomore, and then kind of tacking on what else it says about the wrestling program.
I mean, yeah, he ended up going down a weight class to wrestle in this, which I think was a really good move on his part, as he was the bigger guy in that weight class. As when he was up at 184, he was kind of a smaller guy because he had that transition from 174 last year up to 184 this year. So him going back down, that just shows how much he wanted this and how much he needed to improve. And he did just that this year as he ended up winning.
Now, those top 3 finishes in the PAC championships do earn you a spot in the regional tournament. So Jesse Orban, Seth Evans, and Aiden Bischoff have earned their right to go to the regional tournament. What can we expect from those 3 guys in their next matches coming up in that tournament?
Yeah, Jesse Orban, just for him to keep dominating. Matches are going to get a lot tougher because we're getting people from all over coming in now. So just keep dominating and doing your wrestling. Seth Evans, work on the technique. He does it every single night at practice. I know that. And just with this last match, it looked like he was not really using his technique like he should, but just looking forward and using your technique, trusting your coach, trusting your technique and your moves. And then Aiden Bischoff, he just needs to keep grinding. As we said, he's come back off of an injury, so he's had a heck of a year for himself as he did come back from that injury, and just keep moving forward because he might surprise everybody.
And then finally, I think for me, especially right now, there are 5 schools in the PAC that are wrestling. We added Hiram. Well, the PAC added Hiram this year to the competition compared to the 4 we had last year. Now, next year, we're going to be adding, PAC will be adding a 6th team in Chatham. What do you think that says about where wrestling is going right now in popularity for the PAC right now?
That's a good thing for the PAC, but also I think that it's a bad thing because we have a lot of good wrestlers as it is with 5 teams in here. I haven't really got a chance to look at Chatham, and nobody has. We don't really know what they have to bring to the table. It could be a good thing for the PAC, but it could also be a bad thing. So I'm kind of iffy on this. But the good thing is another team, another PAC matchup for all the matchups. We have W&J, Hiram, St. Vincent, and Teal, and Waynesburg. That gives them another chance to do more reps, get another match in before the PAC tournament next year.
Fantastic. Mo Kiger, thank you so much for joining us here today to talk about wrestling. Now we're going to shift it over indoors still with some indoor track and field with Vinny Heller after this. Hello, welcome back into the studio. We're now joined for indoor track and field by the one and only, the second most Italian man on the column floor, Mr. Vinny Heller. Vinny, how you doing?
In the flesh, man. I'm doing great. Ready to get going.
All right, let's get it going. All right, so indoor track and field, the season is winding down. We're getting ready for PAX, but before we get there, we did have a meet. Give the lay of the land. Tell us what went on.
So it was kind of a warm-up meet, I'd say. The women's only sent 4 people. The men's, they did good for how many then sent, but didn't send people like Quentin Weaver. Their top key factors, however, they placed first out of all 5 teams. And the women's, like I said, despite only sending 4 players, placed 4 out of 6, which is also pretty well, sending fewer guys. Jacob Parker came first. He actually did better than Garrett Hillard in the weight throw this week as well. First in the shot put, first and in the weight throw. He's actually also the Waynesburg Athlete of the Week, as we know. He also ran the throwers, 4x4, which many of you do not know. It's just a group of throwers who run a 4x4 relay race. They lost. A group of what I was told middle-aged men and women beat them and ran a sub 4 400 4x4, which is pretty absurd to me. John Stewart came out this week to run. Shot put, placed third. Also in the high jump, placed third. Ethan Wilson went a mile and a 3K. He showed out as well. So I definitely think this was a good meet / day to keep going and maybe show some of the guys who haven't been showing out throughout the year have their turn.
Now, you mentioned it was more of a warm-up meet. Not a lot of people were being sent by either the men or the women's team. But the men's team, you mentioned it, they still placed first out of all the teams at the OWU Open. Can we expect them to win the team title at PAX here in a couple of weeks?
I feel like it's too big of an honor to say so I'm going to put it like this. I would say we should expect more single-place finishers. It's very hard, and as the season went on, there hasn't been many consistently top 10, top 5, top 3 showings, placings for me to say that they'll take a win at the PAC championships this week. So I'm going to label it as more of an individual meet. Get some championships. Quentin Weaver, hopefully he shows out. Jacob Harker does his thing. Have a couple guys coming back with some hardware.
You're pretty well put together for conditioning. You've talked about it. You've alluded before for football and track. But for you right now, and you also alluded to it before, not a lot of teams were sent, not a lot of runners or athletes were sent to this meet for Waynesburg. So for you, do you think it was, wise, or even in future cases for, other sporting teams, like if you have an option to go to meets, would you decline the option and try to allow yourself to get healthy and not get hurt? Or do you condone or think it's a smart idea to go out there and try to stay warm, especially when you have 2 weeks off from your championship meet?
I take it as to stay warm. I like that aspect of it because not only are you still running and keeping your body in shape, but you're still competing in some sort. Quentin Weaver wasn't at OWU, but was in Ohio for another meet on his own, the Youngstown's Last Chance. But I can see where many people coming from where, okay, they have PAC championships. Why would they come out and run this week when they could have another week and just take it straight training? Like I said, only sending a few people. I feel like this was a way to get some of the younger, maybe people who haven't been showing out on the radar for the PAC championships, maybe give them a little bit of confidence going into this meet. Like I said, Jacob Harker showing first in both of his events, that could be a high-rolling mindset going into these PAC championships. So I think this meet will turn out for the better.
Now, looking at the women in particular, they haven't had as many top 10, top 5 finishes, but they have had a number of top 3, top 5, top 10 finishes throughout the season. What can we expect from the women's side of things heading into the PAX?
I got a few names who I really think are going to show out as they've had sporadically throughout the season. Maggie Claire, Jaleesa Fuller, Meg Berry, Ella Rochelle, and Grace Tanksley. I think they, in my opinion, led by Maggie Claire, being one of the better throwers in the PAC as a freshman showing out, placing third against D2 teams. I think we can expect something from the women's team on this side. Ella Rochelle not running every meet this year, but they're still very consistent in their respective events. They've showed PR times. They've showed improvement throughout this season. So I wouldn't say a team win, but I'd definitely say some success on the women's side.
Bring it back to Jacob Harker. We've alluded to his success all year, here on JSW for track and field. It's shown with the Waynesburg Athlete of the Week. He's consistently winning it, consistently breaking records. How does he maintain that to end this year, but also kind of leading into outdoor season whenever the weather eventually starts to get warm?
I feel like you have to have a nonstop mindset. You go out and you practice every day and you place at these meets because of that practice. I feel like nothing should change going into the outdoor season. I feel like you should continue to compete against your teammates / other athletes in the races. However, I feel like it's a complete mindset thing. If you want to practice and keep doing your thing, you'll probably see more throwers out in the outdoor season when you see more conference teams and bigger teams, more advanced teams. I feel like he had a great season, record-breaking season for himself. I feel like this is really a milestone for him to, as a sophomore, build up and then just keep taking steps and steps to become the leader of the team who you look up to and you look after as he does and leads by example.
Well, Vinny, thank you for joining us on the desk to talk about the PAC championships coming up for indoor men's and women's track and field. When we come back, we're talking women's basketball with Joey Cirillo. Time to shift our focus over to women's basketball. Just 2 games remaining in the regular season. Here, as always, to talk women's basketball with us is Joey Cirillo. Joey, they did get officially eliminated from playoff contention with the loss against Washington and Jefferson. Outscored by 17 points in that game, 17 points in the first quarter. It was 20-3 after the opening quarter. What really went wrong off the jump for Waynesburg in that game?
I think it really was just there was no defense that was able to stop this Washington and Jefferson team in this first quarter. But then after that, it really started to just be a defensive game from both sides of the ball. I think Waynesburg went into it thinking that it was going to be really offensive heavy, which it was for Washington and Jefferson, not for Waynesburg's opportunities. And it really came down to myself looking at the three-pointers. Only 3 threes were made in this entirety of the game, which is not how we've seen this Waynesburg team at all throughout the season. So I think that's really where it came down to. Was it that it was the missed shooting from a lot of different players? Yes, but it also was, you have to give credit to the President's defense that was able to continue to do the takeaways, get those rebounds, and be able to put the points up where it really matters.
So kind of shifting to a season overview recently, Waynesburg dominates St. Vincent, that number 4 seed in the playoffs right now. Then they go and they do get handled, but show some signs of life, especially in that second and third quarter against W&J. But overall, right now, even with 2 games left to go in the season, where do you put this women's team? Are you happy with what they've done? They're projected to finish 9th in the PAC. They're currently about 8th right now, but the record says a little bit of a different story. Where do you put this season right now?
Right now, I would definitely put an A+ on it. As although you were maybe looking for those playoff opportunities going into this late of the season, we've never been able to have that option in the past 2-3 seasons with this women's team. It's never been able to be done because they've always been in that 2-5 win category. Now they're able to get 12 total wins, 7 conference wins. That is 100% a win. I think at this point, you're already above 500 by 1 game. Just win 1 more. It's a winning season. I've been saying it for the past 2 episodes. A winning season is more important right now than a playoff season. Getting that winning season is just going to be a confidence booster, a morale booster. And with only losing 2 seniors, one that is very influential to this team and another that isn't as much, I definitely think that it's going to be helpful going into next season.
Yeah, you mentioned that they're not losing very many seniors. Maddie Dayton, obviously, she played a big role on this team. But looking at their starting lineup and what it has been the last few games for Waynesburg, Tori Wesolowski Jr., she's coming back. Mia Hankins, sophomore, she's coming back. Callista Friday Jr., she's coming back. Macy Justice, freshman, she's got 3 more years after this year. Those are 4 starters coming back next year. What can you expect? I know it's early, there's still a whole offseason to go through, but what can you expect from this team next season where we stand today?
I think this team has definitely built some chemistry that they don't want to lose. With those juniors currently going into their senior year, they definitely want to capitalize on it going into next season. Next season is definitely going to be a playoff season. You're going to want to look into that a lot more, into that playoff area. Are you going to maybe strive for that 5 or 6 seed? Maybe. But at this point, you really just want to try and make continuous competitive play against teams like Washington and Jefferson, Chatham. Those teams you need to contend with more than you have in this past season. I think the biggest thing is just taking advantage of those players that are going to be graduating after next season. Wesolowski and Friday, as you said, got to be seniors. You got to take them while they are right now, and you got to capitalize on it. I don't think we're going to see many transfers coming in or out. I think the biggest thing is just going to be keeping the team as it is and going forward.
So kind of reeling us back in here with the 2 games left, starting with Franciscan on the road tomorrow night at 5:30. Waynesburg right now, how do you beat a Franciscan team that's already struggling? How do you get off that, especially with a tough loss against a top team in the conference like W&J?
At this point, it's mainly just looking to continue those wins, continue to get them as best they can. Maybe going back to that 3-pointer and seeing where you can go with it. Franciscan's defense against the 3 has not been very good this season. I think that mainly just trying to find their rhythm again. Washington and Jefferson was kind of an off game. We kind of expected it a little bit going into it, but at this point, just find your rhythm, find it back at the 3-point line. That's where they've been able to do it the best. Finding that arc again, it's going to be the easiest way to get that win.
Now, not even necessarily talking about strategy and exploiting the weaknesses of Franciscan and Teal, but looking at this team on their own. Their last 2 games, very winnable games. We just talked about Franciscan. Then they've got Teal on Saturday for their senior day. Teal, a team that hasn't won a conference game or a game overall in the past few seasons. What are you looking for this team to do to try to build chemistry and build, dare I say it, momentum going into the offseason?
I think the biggest thing is also going to be looking for senior Riley Furlong. She's going to be getting some time, at least in my opinion, getting some time a little bit in these last 2 games. And I think that's going to boost a lot of the morale and confidence within this team. Being able to see a senior that's been on this team, been able to help them while even not being on the court. She's been able to help them on the bench and in practice majority of the time. I definitely think that that's going to be a momentum builder. But also being able to see those other seniors like Maddie Dayton continue to play, continue to be as aggressive as she's been. I think just seeing that a little bit more will boost this team and give them that momentum, as said before.
So with these last 2 games kind of tying off that or pushing on that, do you think we're going to see a lot more other bench players get some more minutes as well? Maybe not even upperclassmen, but also those freshmen and sophomores that have been sitting on the bench waiting to get some time or maybe some moments to get some playing time.
I could see some going in and out depending on the lead that they might have in a certain game. If it's Teal, like we said, Teal has not been able to win a game in the past 3 seasons. So maybe if they get a good 20-point lead on Teal or something, you see maybe some of those freshmen that haven't played at all this season, maybe juniors or seniors, sophomores that might be able to come in that haven't played a lot this season. I could see them coming in at some point, but I wouldn't count on it.
Now, just to wrap things up, outside of the traditional 5 starters we've seen towards the end of the season, again, we mentioned all coming back with Wazalowski, Moorbacher, Hankins, Justice, and Friday. Give me somebody off the bench that will be coming back next year that you want to see play a bigger role, not only in these last 2 games, but even next season moving forward for this Jackets team.
I have 2 actually for you. I have Macy Justice that has just been able to get those starting lineups. She's had about 2 or 3, I think, in these past games, and just continuing to show that she can be a starter. She could be that shooter that they might need, or maybe just the person they need to rely on to find the ball in different areas of the court. She's been able to do that very, very well, and being able to do that as a freshman on a team that's loaded with a lot of sophomores and juniors, I definitely think that was a case to be shown. But another one is Mia Hankins. She was a little bit slower this season, not a lot going on with her in the shooting area. I think going into next season, getting some more shooting going on from her, I think is going to lead this team to be a lot higher in their 3-point percentage, but then also just in confidence in being able to shoot that ball at all points throughout the season.
All righty, Joe, thank you so much for your insight and layout of the land of our women's basketball season. As now we're going to switch it to the men's side of things for some hoops, break down their game against W&J, and as well as the end of the season wrap-up, all here on JSW.
Unable to watch the live stream? Follow our account on X for live updates on the game. Check us out on Instagram as well for game day posts with all the information you need to know, as well as behind the scenes of each production. Our social media team works the hardest to give the best content to all of our audience. We're even on TikTok. You can stay up to date with WCTV on our Instagram account with clips from each of our shows. And last but not least, subscribe to our WCTV YouTube channel to watch those shows in full length. Check us out from Lewiston, WCTV, and the entire Department of Comm.
Welcome back into the final segment of JSW. As mentioned, it's men's basketball, but now we went from second to first. The most Italian man in the comm department, Mr. Benicio the Falco, has joined us on the segment. So, Benny, we're not going to waste any time. We're getting right into it right now. Men's basketball this season overall has been a little bit of a disappointment from what was expected. 4th in the PAC expected finish. They're not there. 7-game skid, have had multiple losing streaks this year. Overall, just this season, talk about it. What do you think has gone wrong? Where do you think things started to go wrong?
Well, the injury bug started to catch up to these guys a little bit later in the season, but not only that, just with those injuries, made a restriction of the bench, and your starters were kind of forced to play 30 minutes a game. That's an issue, especially as the season went on. The tiredness kind of started to catch up with these guys, and it honestly made those starters start to deal with the injuries themselves. I know Corey Mitchum, he's a little banged up right now. Jalen Davis was banged up all season long, and now he has the biggest increase of minutes to this point. So just guys like that, the bench really wasn't there. And even at that, I'd like to see those guys even get minutes. I know that Grant Barnhart missed a bunch of time with injury, but there's those guys. There's Tyreek Williams. He's been here for 3 years now, still hasn't seen a lot of playing time. Why not put him in just for a little bit of time? He doesn't even have to really necessarily make an impact on the game in terms of scoring, but getting those guys in and getting that experience is going to be huge, especially going into next season, but it also would have helped your starters down the line.
Now, I want to talk about the Washington and Jefferson game really quick. Waynesburg at multiple points had double-digit leads in this game. They were up by 10 points with less than 3 minutes left, and they still lost that game. Just what went wrong there against Washington and Jefferson?
Well, for starters, I would like to say this. St. Vincent was probably the worst I've seen this team play all season. Washington and Jefferson, I know it was a loss. I think this was the best this team has played, especially with the circumstances. 5-game losing streak going into it, but they didn't look defeated. They came into this game with motivated, and they played probably the best I think they've played, especially as a team. Everybody was getting involved. Anton Baker, he's been consistent all season. 25 points, 12 rebounds. He had multiple possessions where he was getting rebounds over 2 or 3 defenders. And that effort from him made an impact on the game. Jalen Davis, 16 points, his career high or season high on the season. And then Aiden Blake, I know he only had 5 points, but in those 9 minutes of play, he also managed to get 2 steals. He made an impact on the defensive side of things. But it ultimately came down to the 3-pointers by Washington and Jefferson. Berlinski and Seidel for the Presidents hit 4 3-pointers each. Berlinski was the game winner at the time. He's only a freshman. So, that kind of sets a tone for that Presidents team we're going to see for years to come. But then it eventually sent Scott Bilvis. They put Scott in the game, being that he's the best 3-pointer shooter on this team. He took a 3-pointer, got fouled on it, made the first free throw, missed the second, so he's kind of forced to, just chuck a shot up, hope to get the rebound. It didn't hit the rim, so all the Presidents had to do was inbound. I'm not putting the blame on Scott here. You mentioned they were up 10 points with 3 minutes left in the game. Losing in this fashion, there's no excuse for that. I think it kind of falls on one component.
So overall, you kind of alluding to some of the things that were working for Waynesburg. While they didn't win and they had another second half loss, they were able to pull a lot together and have a lot of positives. What are some other positives you were able to see throughout the season? I know I just alluded to, where the expectation a little falling short, but also maybe what came together. What are some things that worked or you saw this season that we haven't seen in the last 2 years?
Well, I'll say this. I know these guys are leaving, but the progression and some of the maturity from these guys, I'll probably touch on the whole starting lineup here. Anton Baker, great season, Defensive Player of the Year just a season ago. But his strides, you could tell that he's a little bit more of a leader this season. I know he's not really a vocal guy, but he was kind of forced into that role this season, being that, yes, there were some seniors in this lineup, but he's the only senior of the starters to be here all 4 years. So I think that kind of forced him into that role. And you saw it as the season went on, kind of him being more of a vocal leader. And his points kind of stayed the same, but his effort won't be missed here at Waynesburg. And then PJ Suggs, he didn't score a bunch last season, got up to around 12 points per game this season. He showed great strides. You can just tell in his physique overall, the amount of muscle he put in the offseason. You could tell the work he put in. So for the most part, in terms of some positives for the season, I would just say the progress that some of those guys made. And then the transfers overall, it seemed that they were comfortable as soon as they touched down on campus. It seemed like they put in that work during the offseason and kind of already had a relationship before they even got to campus.
Now, you mentioned 3 seniors in Jalen Davis, PJ Suggs, and Anton Baker that this team is losing, that they're going to miss. But what are some of the non-seniors, the underclassmen, juniors or below, that you're looking at to maybe get a little more playing time in the last 2 games and see a little more from them, not only in these final 2 games this season, but over the offseason heading into the 2025-26 season?
I've talked about him a bunch the past couple weeks. Casey Kazee, I'd like to see his minutes improve. I know Corey Mitchum is kind of dealing with the injury right now. I think they're going to give him his respect in Teal, the Teal game, the last game of the season. I'd expect to see almost a primarily senior starting lineup. maybe even Jordan Fisher included in that, because I think Tim Fusina is going to give those guys the respect that have been here. But in terms of Franciscan, I think he's going to go with what we've kind of been seeing the past 3 games, and he's going to get that rotation in of Aiden Blake, Scott Billovis, Casey Kazee, guys like that. But also Jalen Goins, I know he's a starter in this lineup. He plays, I believe, the most minutes on this team. I'd expect him to have a bunch of strides in the offseason. We always see Casey Kazee and Jalen Goins together and in the gym, so we know that they're going to improve. But Aiden Blake, his best games of the season were against Washington and Jefferson, so I think that shows some of his potential. But then Scott Billovis, he's been a guy I've talked about a bunch this season. He's seen an improvement in minutes, but I'd like to see him put on a little bit more muscle in the offseason. He's kind of done it every season going on, and if he can attack the rim a little bit better, he could be a better scorer in Waynesburg's offense next season.
So there's 2 games left for the men's basketball team right now, Franciscan and Teal. How do you finish out the season strong? What do you do here for the last 2 games for Waynesburg to finish strong? You're not going to make the playoffs, but how do you finish strong? How do you finish off there with the guys you mentioned? I mean, we've been talking about them with Anton. You got PJ, Jalen. How do you finish this season?
Well, you mentioned they are eliminated from the playoffs, but I think they're just still hoping for that 2-0 record in the last 2 games. I know it's not going to affect anything, but why not try to give those people problems? I know both of those teams aren't necessarily top teams in the pack, but beat those teams. Try to mess up this playoff picture in any way you can, because you are the team that's eliminated. And then those guys, Anton Baker, PJ Suggs, Jalen Davis, they put a lot of effort into this program. They're not going to want to leave with 2 straight losses. I mean, they're already on a 6-game losing streak. They're not going to try to extend that anymore.
Well, thank you, Benicio, for talking men's basketball with us on this episode of Jacket Sports Weekly. We want to thank all of our analysts for hopping on the desk to talk wrestling, indoor track and field for men and women's, and basketball for men's and women's. That's going to wrap it up for this episode of JSW. Make sure to stay tuned on our social media pages and our WCTV YouTube channel for more Waynesburg content.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.